Shalom, 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 Baruchim Habaim. Welcome to Awakening TORAH Mussar Mindfulness, our weekly podcast and public offering, live streaming at our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Also at our blog at kehilatmussar.com. Live streaming also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, wherever you can find us on social media. Just beyond delightful to be connecting and moving forward with the next Torah portion that we're following in line. You can also join us, as I said, at the website and sometimes live on Zoom. So delighted to have you here. I am Rabbi Chasya Uriel Steinbauer, the founder and director of the Institute for Holiness, Hamachon LeKedusha, Kehilat Mussar Mindfulness, the community of practitioners on this path towards holiness called Mussar Mindfulness. Mussar in the Jewish tradition, spiritual discipline, and mindfulness coming out of Theravada Buddhism, learning from these ancient traditions, what our ancestors have to share with us, and what God wants us to get. So what do? We delve into the weekly Torah portion of the Hebrew Bible to learn what it is that we need to hear and learn today, to internalize, to use, to cope, heal, and eventually thrive from the genocide of October 7th here in Israel, the ongoing wars with Iran proxies. How can we as a people and all of our allies strengthen each other? So that is what our intention, our kavanah, is to do each week that we connect and meet here. So we always cover our kavanot, our intentions for the session. For those of you joining us by video, you will see before you 3 kavanot, 3 intentions for today's session. They're the same ones we have every week. And for those of you listening by audio on our podcast, you will hear me summarize these. So we see this time together during the awakening, which can be anywhere from about 45 minutes to an hour, as a threefold, really strong process of practicing radical self-care, caring for others, and one's relationship with the divine. And so we see this time as strengthening our own souls to be a benefit to others in the future, and strengthening our relationship with others to be a better conduit of God's good when they need us. And the same thing with our relationship with the divine, which I will call Hashem, God, the creator, so that we can continue to be this vessel, this conduit to bring God's good to the world, to humanity, and forth. So those are our kavanot, our intentions for today's session. I have stopped sharing screen if you are watching by video and have vision. So what are we jumping into today? Give me 1 second. We are jumping into the parasha called Pinchas. Pinchas is the second to last parasha in the book of Bamidbar, in the wilderness. But it means numbers in English. And it took place on July 27th of this year of 2024. The Hebrew date was Kaf Aleph, 21st of the month of Tammuz, in the Hebrew year of Tafshin Pei Dalet, 5784. So as usual, I will give you a summary of this Torah portion so that you can know what we're covering, and then I'll delve into, I think, what is most important this year, given our dedication and theme of really supporting coping and possible healing or on the path towards after October 7th. So for those of you who follow along and want to know exactly where we are, as I said, we are in Parshat Pinchas, and the book of Numbers, and it's in Numbers chapter 25, Pasuk Yud. It starts with Pasuk 10, the verse 10, and then it goes to chapter 30, verse 1. Okay, so today's date, you're joining us on here in Israel. It's August 21st, a Wednesday, about 2:30 in the morning here. The Hebrew date is the 17th of Av. Depending on where you're joining us, it might still be the 20th of August, or it could be well late into the 21st. So here we jump in, centering ourselves. What happens in Pinchas? This is one of the most controversial parshiot for modern commentators of Western secular, humanistic-oriented, especially liberal Jews, and even those who study the Torah, who are bent this way, who have a lot of internal reactivity to this Torah portion. It's been struggled with even by our own sages and commentators for many, many years, 2,000 years. A deep mistrust, reactivity, commentary that what Pinchas did in this Torah portion, which actually wasn't in this one, was in the previous one, and Balak at the end, where he went ahead and killed an Israelite who went ahead and coupled himself with a Midianite and a priestess who he engaged in the worship of a god called Baal Peor, and in engaging in that form of worship with the Midianite priests was a form of some type of sexual intercourse or activity. And so when they very arrogantly and publicly before Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, our ancestors, stepped before them, and he went to show off this Midianite priest to his achim, his brothers or friends or family, he enters this tent with her in order to possibly consummate a marriage or to worship Baal Peor. And if you recall the story, God had commanded Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher, to tell the leaders following him to go ahead and murder their brethren, the leaders who had taken part in the worship of Baal Peor with the Moabite and Midianite women. So it was my interpretation last week, as you know, that Pinchas, who is the grandson of Aharon, the high priest, he is the son to the new high priest, Elazar. He was not taking matters into his own hands, which is often how it gets interpreted today and even among the commentators, but that rather he had heard that command and knew that he was to murder or kill, if you prefer to use that verb, without, in murder we take as someone kills someone without permission, with intention to do. It's just a different level, legally, right? Legal. I can't say the word. So he went ahead and he entered the tent and he killed the Israelite and the Midianite priestess. Okay, so that's the background. Now, as I said, it's highly controversial. A lot of people are very fearful of this behavior, a lot of reactivity. They are fearful that someone else will mimic his behavior, emulate it. This idea of taking matters into one's own hands, even though I posit that he was just following the command to kill who was involved in this worship of Baal Peor. We don't see Pinchas going ahead and continuing to murder any other Moabite or Midianite woman or anyone else. We don't even know if he participated in killing more of his brethren in response to the command. What we do know only from the Torah is when he went ahead and killed these two people, the plague that God had sent to punish and affect those who tied themselves to Baal Peor, and even towards of all the children of Israel, the plague was stopped. Pinchas's behavior stopped the plague. Similar to his grandfather Aharon, who, not killing anyone, but went ahead with his fire pan after a plague had been sent out among the children of Israel, the Hebrews, the Jews. He went and ran with his fire pan to stop the plague, and that stopped it. So Pinchas ends up saving Bnei Israel from a plague, and his reward, if you want to call it a reward, is what is called a brit shalom, okay, a covenant with God of peace. We'll explore this in more detail soon. Because of the deaths from the killings, another census has to take place in order to determine how many eligible male adults over the age of 20 are part of the community, mostly in order to count for not only for division of land later, but who can serve in the military. So they don't include Shevet Levi like before, and so we have the total number. The information from the census is actually used to divide Eretz Israel fairly. There will be a lottery, and the bigger families will get more land, and the smaller families get less. I just want to say very briefly that the families and the tribe of Gad, Reuven, and half Manasseh don't really seem to be a part of this lottery, because they decided on their own terms to where they were going to live without participating in the actual land of Eretz Israel or the lottery, which is highly problematic, even though they go ahead and serve. So we'll address that. I don't know if we'll address it this term. We'll see, maybe next time. Finally, something really important happens in this Torah portion also. The 5 daughters, what is known as Banot Slofchad. Okay, they are the daughters of the man that happens to have the name Slofchad. They go ahead and approach Moshe and say, our father died without a male heir, and back then property was passed down through a male heir, and then if there was none, then a brother, and if there wasn't a brother, then an uncle. And so we have a situation which almost comes across as fictional in order to prove a point. There doesn't seem to be, first of all, there's no son. There doesn't seem to be a brother around, and there most certainly doesn't seem to be an uncle. Perhaps they were part of the people who were killed in the desert at one point or another. So they ask to inherit the land of their father, instead of just that their father's name be kind of erased from their clan, their tribe, and their history. God, of course, approaches, Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher, Moses, goes ahead and approaches God about this, and God says they are in the right. They are to receive the land until they have a male heir who will then take on ownership of it. Finally, God tells Moshe to climb Har Aravim, Mount Aravim, and look at Eretz Israel from a distance, because he will not be able to enter. Moshe beseeches God for an excellent leader to replace him, and God said it will be Yehoshua. Yehoshua was one of the 2 Meraglim spies who did not agree with the rest of the 10 that the land was too fearful and scary to enter, him and Kalev. So we suddenly see his reappearance come, and it's for a reason. We'll touch upon that. Finally, the parsha closes with the details of the korbanot sibur, the public communal offerings offered on regular days, Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, and holidays. So that's a summary of our Torah portion. And what do we want to pay attention to right now? I will start off by saying Pinchas actually did not have the intention to save us, save our ancestors, the children of Israel, from the plague. That is not why he entered the tent and killed those 2 people. He might not even have known that there was a plague yet. So why am I even bringing this up? Because lately it's really in favor to talk about intention, kavanah, versus impact. And we especially bring this up when someone had good intentions, their heart was in the right place, but they end up hurting someone anyway by impact. And so a lot of people like to pay attention just to the impact or favor it more so in order to kind of point out that you have to pay attention to the harm and suffering that someone encounters, regardless if you didn't mean to do it. So this is the actual kind of like hafuk, the opposite case. This is the case where someone didn't have the intention to save the people, and that's actually the impact of his behavior. It's like a bonus, a great gift, right, for what he had intended to do. And what he had intended to do, he was so, what seems to be enraged, disgusted by the behavior of this Israelite man marching this Midianite priestess in front of the people as they were wailing and crying and mourning over the behavior of the Jews who were engaging in the worship of Baal Peor with the Midianite and Moabite women. And with so much arrogance, he marches her before his achim, his brothers, his family, and then enters this tent in order to engage in intercourse with her that's actually right next to and near the Mishkan, the Ohel Moed, where the people are to have utmost purity and where they meet and worship God. So he is enraged. He has just been commanded to kill the leaders, the people involved with this behavior, and he enters that tent and he kills them. End of the plague. Okay, so I want to, as I said, I pointed out his action was not to stop the plague, but rather to engage in what he was commanded to do. And as I said, in this Torah portion, he's rewarded, that's the language used, with a brit shalom, a covenant of peace. I think that I will leave it like that at first because there are some key things I want to touch upon from other sections of the Torah portion. But I will continue with one thing about Pinchas and his behavior, which is Pinchas's action actually ends up helping God and Israel, bringing them back together into relationship again, because what had happened was just this plague was sent out. And once a plague is sent out, it affects anyone and everyone, not just those guilty or have sinned. And his action of killing those 2 people, this violence, this act of war, because essentially once you murder the priestess of Midianites, they will declare war on you. And that's essentially what ends up happening. So his action actually brings back together God and Israel to relate and be in relationship, brought them back to each other. All right. So there's a tikkun here. There's a repair Again, not Pinchas's necessarily his intention, but it's the impact of his behavior. And what I want to say about that is sometimes we don't really fully understand the impact of our behavior until maybe later on when we can have hindsight and look at the consequences of our behavior. Also, often through acts of war and violence, although totally not something that any of us here in Israel want to engage in or do. It is what is necessary, and the impact will be that which is bringing back together Israel, reuniting the people, God willing, and the relationship with God over time. So we've had now over 10 months to look back at the genocide of October 7th, the ongoing wars with Houthis, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Islamic Brotherhood, Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah, you name it, to really be able to look back and realize like there's a larger picture developing here. We thought it was just about Hamas and Palestinian terrorists in Gaza. And now it's almost like God has given us the gift to pull back and see the larger picture, that this is really about Iran and the proxies, and that the impact of our behavior, though it wasn't our intention at first when we entered this war in order to defeat Hamas, demilitarize the Gaza zone, and bring back what hostages we could, the impact is that we are now obviously involved in a regional war with our allies, seeing that we have a much larger enemy that we might as well just call Iran and its proxies instead of saying Hamas or any other terrorist group, and that our intention is all those things I mentioned, and the impact is that we're now addressing a source that wants to cause harm and suffering worldwide. We are now standing up to this radical Islamic jihadism that wishes to take over the world, reestablish the Ottoman Empire. It is so much larger than who participated in the genocide of October 7th and even what's going on in Gaza. So Pinchas in this story really bring us this gift from our ancestors and God to realize we might not have certain intentions for things, and it ends up being the impact. So us being there and fighting in Gaza, and now fighting with Hezbollah in the north, fighting the Houthis in the south, the impact is that we are going to be a part of this amazing relationship with our allies to save Western civilization, to stand up to these bullies who want to make all of us live under their law and fall under essentially the slavery of Islam. And so this is very important. I will finally note that our ancestors regarding Pinchas feel the need to, based on their reactivity to his behavior, they really consider his shalom, his brit, his covenant of peace with God, to be one that is incomplete. So much so that the scribes from like 2,000 years ago write in the Torah the word shalom with like almost erased middle of the letter Vav. So it's spelled with Shin, Lamed, Vav, final Mem. And the Vav has been broken inside, almost erased, making it look like a Yud instead. And they did that on purpose in order to give the commentary. They feel that this is an incomplete piece. Why is this an incomplete piece, this covenant with God, with Pinchas? Because our ancestors felt, or at least the dominant voices who end up having the power to write the Torah and pass down its teachings and lineage felt that it was done with war, it was done with violence, it was done with death, and they don't feel that this is like a full, complete peace, one that is shlemut, complete and whole. So living now and living through this genocide of October 7th and the ongoing wars, I don't believe in that. I don't agree with it. I feel like I just have so much more of a realistic view. I've learned this actually from Theravada Buddhism, this idea of seeing clearly the way things really are, not how I want them to be. And I feel like so many people, like our rabbis, at least the dominant voices here, and even a lot of Western peaceniks, those who are considered progressive on the left side, will live out their politics and not only wish for policy and their activism from how they want things to be, as if that is how things are. They rarely see things how they are, and that gets them in a lot of trouble, especially from people who don't live by their values or play by their rules, i.e., terrorists, those involved with radical Islam. So I think it's much more healthy and realistic to see clearly also just the nature of the human being. We are not complete. There'll never be shlemut. There'll never be shalom. And people don't want to hear that. They think it is capable. I don't think fully it is. And so sometimes we do have to engage in war and violence and killing in order to stop those who would kill even more, cause even more harm and suffering. And that's really a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. And that's why even during World War II, you had those who fought, those who said that they were neutral, which none of us really believe that you can be neutral in a war with such evil. You have to choose. If you don't choose, you side with those who are evil. And then, of course, those who were completely against the war for whatever reason, maybe because they were going to lose and be killed. Similar here, right? You have voices that want this war in Gaza to stop no matter what, because they think that, and there's been enough violence, enough killing. They want a ceasefire no matter what. That's not going to accomplish anything. You're just going to have more and more war, more October 7th, more terrorism, more violence, more missiles, if you leave in power those who caused it in the first place. And that is why you can't just stop the war, because it makes you deeply uncomfortable to see the consequences of war. Similarly, any of those who are neutral and just pretend, put their head in the sand, I'm not against the war, I'm not for it, that can't exist either, because sooner or later they will come for you, like they are in Europe and North America. So let's leave it at that. I want to move to the greater tikkun, the greater repair that's happening here. The daughters of Slofchad. Now look at the name Slofchad, okay? This is my first time really seeing this. I love when I study Torah for many, many years. I'm 50 years old, so, say I've been studying Torah really intensely for at least 25, if not more. And then you always see something new. I see it as shefa, it's a gift from God. Okay, so Salofchad, it's Sadi Lamed, Pe, Chet, Daled. It has in it Sel, which means shadow of, or the shade, right? Shade or shadow of. Pachad, a fear. And the daughters are in the shadow of fear. Who was the last time who had a name like this? Bitzal El. He was in the shadow of God. And here, pachad often means God. We call it Yitzhak, Pachad Yitzhak, right? This fear of Yitzhak towards God. And fear not in a bad way, fear as in yirah, as in reverence and awe and fear, that we often only really have for the divine. Sometimes people have it for instance, a parent, but not usually in modern Western cultures. So here we have these daughters that are in the shadow of this fear of God that really shows how spot on their moral compass is. This should have us immediately bring up, oh, this is just like Avraham, our first forefather, who really had a certain moral compass at the right time in certain situations, where he even said, I don't think the fear of God is here in this place. Fear of God meaning I understand right from wrong and I live by it. I have my moral compass. The same thing with the midwives, whether they were Egyptian or Hebrew back in Egypt, are the same way. They lived by fear of God, and therefore they refused to murder the Hebrew babies based on Paro, the Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt, his command for them to murder them. So immediately you should come to mind that these daughters are standing up in total moral authority, this clear moral compass. They know right from wrong. They use their power of speech and healthy self-esteem, of that balanced anava of humility, and they say, our Father. We're not going to let the memory of our Father die simply because you don't have a law addressing this yet. This is very profound. This is a tikkun, a repair for the meraglim, the spies or scouts that were sent, that were 12 men, 10 of whom were the opposite of seil pachad, the opposite of having that true fear of God, that strong moral compass, knowing right from wrong. Instead, they allowed human fear, fear of other humans, to take precedent over the fear that one should have over God, living in alignment with God's values and what God wants from us. So they went ahead and internalized and reacted from their own fear of the other people that were very large to them. And so they spoke out that fear and acted out, really inappropriately sharing that reactivity that just caused mass fear then from the rest of the children of Israel who were present for it. So here come these strong women, centered, understanding their moral compass, why they're here, totally repairing what the scouts had done. And that's also why at this moment you have Yehoshua showing up, who is being told he will be the next leader. He will be the next Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher. Why? Because he's in alignment with Banot Slofchad, the daughters of Slofchad, in the shadow of the fear of God. He has held and strengthened Moshe all the way through this. He was one of them that spoke up with Caleb and says, of course we can enter the land. God's with us. We can do this, living God-oriented instead of fear of other humans oriented. So this is so important. It's also why they get to inherit the land. They live so in alignment, so much so. Let's look at their full name and why we're even told it, okay? Here we have Banot Slofhad ben Chefer, ben Gilad, ben Machir, ben Menashe, Lemishpachot Menashe ben Yosef. Okay, so the daughters of Slofhad, son of Hefer, son of Gilad, son of Machir, son of Menashe, from the family of Menashe, son of Yosef. Yosef being the second youngest son of Yaakov, our last of the three patriarchs, who ended up down in Egypt before our ancestors were enslaved, Yosef, on Yaakov's deathbed, promises that he will go ahead and bury his father back in the land of Canaan, and the land that will be Eretz Israel, because that is where Yaakov belongs, and he knows it, clear in his moral compass. Yosef also says to the children of Israel, says to the sons, passed on generation 400 years later, bury my bones in Eretz Israel, carry them up with you. Moshe Rabbeinu carries up Yosef's bones into Eretz Israel because he too wants to be with his father, who he honored. Moshe honored Yosef's wish to have a proper burial in the land of Israel. And now the daughters of Slochad, who come from that lineage of Yosef through Menashe, all the way through, are saying the same thing. We too deserve to be in that land, to inherit it, to be buried there eventually with our ancestors, to return to them. This is the whole tikkun, the repair, coming full circle, hundreds of years later. So when we talk about kavanah, intention for our behavior today, we can never fully understand the impact, especially hundreds of years later. But here's the impact of Yaakov saying to Yosef, bury me in the land of Israel with my ancestors. Yosef, bury me, carry my bones up with you when you're freed from slavery. Return me to my ancestors in the land of Israel. Bonot Slafchad, allow us to inherit the land, keep our memory of our father alive. We love our father so much and so dedicated to him, so dedicated to the land and our ancestors, to be in this lineage in our ancestral land. We want to inherit and pass it on to our sons when it's the right time. Look at that. There's no greater tikkun against what the panic and fear of other human beings that the scouts brought, who will never inherit and who will not be buried in the land. So heavy stuff there. I think quite beautiful. I hadn't seen this full circle until this year. I feel like sometimes God removes, sometimes there might be a veil that we can't see everything, and maybe it's not even the right time for us to see it. But this was the gift to me this year that I wanted to share with you, that I saw all this, these connections. And I think this is so important for us today as Israelis, as Jews, as our allies, the land of Israel. Our intention is to be here, to serve, to care for one another, to inherit the land, to be buried here with our ancestors, to thrive in our ancestral land. Those are our kavanot, our intentions. The impact of our ancestors all the way back to Yaakov, even Abraham, is that we be here. We are the stars and the pebbles of sand, and that we are here. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever take that for granted. You're here for a reason. Strengthen it. Take pride in it. Know that your impact, even if you're not going to see it hundreds of years later, 25 generations later, is that you are going to pass down this land, our ancestral land and our home, and that seil pachad, to be in the shadow of the fear of God with that really strong moral compass, knowing right from wrong and living by it. We're going to pass on to our children and our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, B'ezrat Hashem, God willing. Okay? So I think with that, I'm going to move us into our mindfulness meditation practice, so that we can really finally fully internalize and feel very much embodied the lessons of this Torah portion this week. Taking a deep breath. So come to your posture that is best for you for meditation. I'm going to be seated on my chair fully at the edge so that I can be upright. You want to be both awake and alert in a dignified posture, not West Point stiff, as our teacher John Kabat-Zinn likes to say. But you want to be awake and alert. And so I like to say you feel that you're created in the image and likeness of the divine. That's how it feels, right? I'm sitting up tall and proud. If you need to be walking back and forth, or you want to stand in a strong mountain pose, please go do so. Also, lie down if you are having chronic pain or low back issues. Any of these postures are acceptable, one of the 4 postures of mindfulness meditation. So we're going to begin by inviting you to close your eyes if you have vision and you feel comfortable. Otherwise, just lower your gaze down before you so you're not distracted by anything. We're going to take a deep breath in and out. Inhalation again. And out. And this last one, I invite you to kind of raise your shoulders all the way up. Inhalation to your ears. And then letting go, exhalation. Letting the shoulders drop. Deep breath out. Allowing a natural smile to emerge if you feel that it's there for you. No need to force it or fake it. All is welcome. Really coming to this present moment, inviting yourself fully here for this meditation as you would a best friend. So that means noticing if your thoughts are still trying to take you away, to bring yourself to this present moment through my voice, through your breath as an anchor, allowing your breath to fall to its own natural rhythm. Noticing your emotions, any strong reactivity present, or maybe over-identifying with whatever narrative you may have going on in your head. Just welcoming it all. No need to push it away or have judgment towards yourself or whatever might be arising. Just being with whatever is, seeing if you can be that kind, curious witness to yourself with whatever arises. I'll start off our meditation with just sharing a short, brief story, which is my beloved 11-year-old son, when we were studying this Torah portion together, said, not only could it be Seil Pachad, the last name of Banot Slofchad, being in the shadow of fear of God, but it could be Salafchad, which is a very sharp pointed sniper, in the sense that their advocacy, their demand, their wish, their wanting to be in line with the passed on ancestral lineage of the land and really honoring and defending their father was like a pointed, sharp sniper. They were so direct and focused with amazing zerizut, enthusiasm that was balanced, came forward with speech, used it to advocate for what they needed and wanted, and ended up being worthy of not only all 5 of their names being present, but also the lineage of all the males that they came from, reminding us that they come from Menashe, who comes from Yosef. Nothing more powerful than that, than Yosef obviously coming from Yaakov, who then comes from Yitzhak, and Yitzhak comes from Avraham. So it's really beautiful, that reading that he brought to us also. So that's how we are today, even with our own meditation practice. We can be very on point like Salaf Had, right? That pointed sniper with where is our curriculum? What is it that we need to pay attention to? What is it that we're doing here right now? And so for a lot of us, there's a real need to be able to use our daily meditation practice as radical self-care. And it's so important with so much stress of living in a war-torn country and the threat of even a larger war all the time kind of lingering over, that we have to be very guarded, like the pointed sniper, living in alignment in the shadow of the fear of God, that we constantly care for ourselves, radical self-compassion, to spend this time connecting in Sangha and community, to sit, to come and sit in our seated practice, in our standing practice, in our walking meditation practice, and our lying down practice, to really care for ourselves. There are so many benefits that you're welcome to Google or ask your doctor about of meditation, of a regular practice. Lowers blood pressure, really relaxes the whole body over time. It's excellent for the heart, mind, body, soul. And this is so important, as I said, in the middle of what we live with right now, that we take this time to care for ourselves. And we have great role models. We have role models like Pinchas, who commanded to do something by God and go ahead and do it, stop a plague, save the relationship between God and the people. We have the example, the role models of Banot Slofcha, these amazing 5 women who come with their wise, appropriate speech in order to advocate for their father and future generations. And it's quite we're quite a gift and a blessing in this Torah portion. So as Shlomo HaMelech taught us, there's a time for war, and there's a time for peace. And right now is a time for war. May we take that wisdom and know that some of us will use the skills of wise speech like Banot Stofchad. Some of us will be soldiers and actually fight like Pinchas. We all have a role to play. We all come with intention, great intentionality, knowing the impact is going to be so important for our future generations. And we can trust that it will all work out as God plans, because look at what happened with our ancestors. A people who almost didn't make it through the 40 years in the wilderness, constantly under threat of violence, killing each other, threat of annihilation, even from the relationship with God, threat of other nations harming and killing them. It was a war on multiple fronts, and one that those centered, living by the moral compass, knowing right from wrong, following God, with trust, with strength, with resilience. They are the ones who survived, who entered the land and followed through. We'll sit for a minute of silence before I take us out of the meditation. For those of you with your eyes shut, slowly and gently open your eyes, allowing the light to filter back in, joining us on the sacred Zoom screen if you're joining us on video or live stream. For those of you coming out of the meditation through audio or podcast, just taking your time to come out of the meditation. There's no rush. It's my practice to bow after meditation. You may join me if you wish and you feel comfortable bowing to the Almighty for bringing these ancient traditions and practices to us, and this knowledge and the Torah and the Dharma. Bowing to our ancestors for bringing us to this moment that we've made it. Surely their intention and the impact. That's one place where it's in alignment. And bowing to yourself for your discipline and commitment and zerizut, this balance, determination, enthusiasm to your practice, this constant showing up to your Vad and Sangha, to the community of the Institute for Holiness, to be on this path towards holiness together. Such a blessing. Do subscribe, as I said, to our YouTube channel, to our email list at kehilatmussar.com. Be in touch once you subscribe. For those of you who want to become members, we'd love to have your support, even to support this weekly public offering podcast, vlog, as it's called. Really support that this is able to happen. So we close with dedicating this seating and teaching today to the 6 hostages who were returned to us, their bodies. That, of course, means so much to all of us here in Israel, but especially to the families who now have the body of their family member to be able to bury and to be with them. So after 318 days of being in captivity by Palestinian terrorists in Gaza, they were kidnapped and murdered, the hostages. We have Chaim Perry, 79-year-old man. Yoram Metzger, 80-year-old man. Avraham Monder, a 78-year-old man. Nadav Popoel, a 51-year-old man. Alexander Danzig, a 75-year-old man. And finally, Yagav Bushtab, a 35-year-old man. May their memories be for a blessing. May we, hundreds of years from now, be able to say their memories so for a blessing, that this is the impact, that they did not die in vain, that their great grandchildren are thriving in Israel and their ancestral land. Thank you for today. We will connect soon from the final parshiot in the book of Bamidbar in Numbers. It is Matot Maaseh, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.